Welcome to the show. This is No Interference Live, and we are into week 4 of the NFL season. If you are up this early, you have the option to watch our show, or you can watch the boring Viking Saints game. It is completely your choice. But we are going to get underway and start off with a little recap of the Thursday night Dolphins Bengals game. So, for those of you that watch the game, the main story has got to be the Tua Tagovailoa concussion. Are we calling it a concussion scandal at this point?
I mean, it has to be. I mean, we just talked about everything that happened in the prior week on the last show. And I mean, I was watching the game live, and as soon as it happened, I couldn't believe it, to be honest. Um,
Yeah,
it's,
well, like you said, we talked about on our last recording, and we were like, common sense. You watch the week 3 game against the Bills, and you're like, he has a concussion. And then we were like, well, what if he goes out there and gets another concussion? And sure enough, that's exactly what happens.
yeah. And the stumbling over, against who was it against?
The
Last,
Bills.
against the Bills. Like, that's as bad as it looks already, a concussion, when you're able to get up and you're stumbling around and actually fall over like he did. And then the next week, on a short week, nonetheless, it was kind of graphic what happened. And Amazon, of course, showed the replay over and over, which I think they caught some flack for.
Yeah.
But that's what you see when you watch a UFC fight. Like, it was
Yeah.
just something like that you don't want to see. And I mean, it sounds like the investigation's going pretty hard now. So
Well, this is what I think is telling. The NFL has already came out and said they're going to put in stricter concussion policies moving forward. And then I've seen a few, like, I guess, doctors on social media saying that Tua shouldn't have played week on Thursday, and now that he's had potentially back-to-back concussions, he should at the very least miss a month, if not more. And now there's a few people have said that the NFL might make the rule if you get a concussion, you automatically have to miss the next week's game, like no matter what.
yeah, it's usually they have to pass the concussion protocols to play the next game, right? But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they go that route. And like you just said, I don't know how he doesn't miss a few weeks just to stay on the safe side.
Well, I was
Um,
listening to a former player. I, for the life of me, can't remember who it was, but it was on his, I guess, his radio show, and he was saying that for I guess the concussion test is like more like it's like brain teaser games, like memory and puzzles and stuff like that, and they were saying how in the past the questions were literally what day is it, what year is it, where are you. So he basically said that the questions, even if you are concussed, aren't that hard, but you can come off the field for a big hit, pass those tests, and then the trainer and the coach would be like, "Are you good to go?" And you're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'm fine." And then he just said he would feel fine, but then 3, 4 hours later or whatever, it would be like he got hit by a truck all of a sudden.
Kind of like delayed
Yeah,
symptoms. I don't
but
know if it's because both of the hits. Well, the first one he got pushed after he threw the ball and he kind of stumbled backwards and smacked his head, and then the second one he kind of got ragdolled. He is a smaller guy, so I mean, it's tough both ways, but I think I think you're right. Things are definitely going to change from the NFL's perspective, and then the NFLPA. I'm really curious to see what happens with the Dolphins on their end. Like, what kind of I can't imagine that they don't get some kind of penalty.
I'm thinking if it does come out that they botch this, there it's going to be. I think the most a team is allowed to be fined is like 500,000. I could be wrong, but I feel like draft picks will be. taken away.
Yeah, that would suck because we talked about reviewing last week's games that I think we did that he probably wanted to come back in, and I think players usually do. And I think Shannon Sharp, and I usually don't like any of his takes, but I think he mentioned along the lines that, yeah, players do want to come in, but it's the team's responsibility to protect them from themselves. And I think that's
Yeah,
true because
certainly.
you don't want to let your teammates down by not coming back in. And I'm not saying I don't think this is the case. Maybe back in the day, if you got a concussion, it could be seen as like a get back out there and just play it off, and you don't want to look weak. But I think that's not really the case nowadays. Um, so the Dolphins, if it comes out that they were negligent, and the doctor already got fired, right? The neurologist.
Oh, well, I didn't even see that. Was he really?
Yeah, the I don't know if it was the separate one that they're supposed to bring in or the team one, but apparently he had made mistakes in the past already, and he got fired like yesterday or 2
So
days
it might
ago.
have been like the third party one because I feel like if it was a Dolphins doctor, I would have heard it. So
Okay,
maybe
let
it
me
was a
look it up
third
really
pot.
quick.
Maybe it was a third party, and the NFL was probably just like, we no longer need your services. Like perhaps that is what it was. But from what I've heard from players who have already left like or retired, they have said that like it's better than what it was, the concussion protocols, but they're still like it's still kind of a joke.
Yeah, okay. So not quite what I said, but the NFL Players Association has dismissed a neurologist who evaluated Miami Dolphins quarterback. Um, the one who evaluated him for the Bills game, so that was didn't even have to do with the Bengals game.
Well, that I mean that would have been the one because you're assuming that like a neurologist would have been like, yeah, you're done. Like,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about that anymore, but we can get to the actual the the game on the field.
I mean, that was the biggest story of the night. Obviously, outside of that game wise, the Dolphins were arguably after an early 3 games looking like one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL, taking out the Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, 2 heavyweights in the AFC. Um, and I think Tua went out in the second quarter, midway second quarter, end of second quarter, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
And then I didn't even know they had Teddy Bridgewater as a backup, so that was kind of convenient for them.
I knew they had Teddy, and I thought it was funny because I was like, oh, these such similar quarterbacks, like
Mhm.
they're good decision makers for the most part. Maybe not the best arm, injury problems, but I mean, good for Teddy. I feel like he never really got the shot he deserves, and injuries have just robbed him of what could have been a pretty nice career.
Yeah, I mean, he started off with the Vikings, not to get off track, but they were, I think, top seed in the NFC, at least not close to it, and then they had that missed field goal in that outside stadium while they were waiting for the new one to get built, so
Yep.
but, yeah, I mean, the Bengals look okay. I mean, it was 27-15 was the final score. Joe Burrow was 20 for 31, 2 touchdowns. He had the big play to T. Higgins, and then um, earlier in the game, I think the first score of the game, Joe Mixon scored from the goal line. And I think his other touchdown was a pass to the tight end.
Hurst.
Hurst.
I think the telling thing is he's only sacked one time.
Mhm.
I'm not off the top of my head. I don't know where the Dolphins rank in sacks, but seeing how he was getting sacked, he was averaging like 5 or 6 sacks a game this year. So only getting hit once is good. If they can keep him upright, good things will probably happen. But if you look at the stats for the game, it was a pretty even game. Time of possession, Bengals won 31 to 28 minutes, so that's close. Total yards was Dolphins won 378, 371. The passing, rushing, penalties, the total plays. The only thing was the Bengals got 2 interceptions. Von Bell picked off Tua and he picked off Teddy Bridgewater. That's 2 drives, 2 possessions, 2 scores. That's kind of the game right there. So I don't know if it's I don't know, like, if it's like I wouldn't say the Bengals because I mean, the Dolphins were an undefeated team, so I don't know if you're just like, "Oh, this is a good move in the right direction for the Bengals," but if you're the Dolphins, you're like, all things considered, you played a Super Bowl, team from last year pretty evenly, so it's just this would have been a great game, I think, but then mishandling of, Tua.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a win for the Bengals. As you mentioned, the offensive line held up much better. It doesn't matter who it's against because I'm pretty sure even against bad pass rushes, the Bengals don't do that great. Going back to Joe Burrow's first 2 years. And the thing is, even before Tua got injured, I don't think he was playing. From my eye test, I don't think he was playing a great game. He was 8 of 14 for 100 yards and an interception. There was a play to Tyreek Hill. I think he was lined up in the slot and he went through the DB and safety. And if Patrick Mahomes was his quarterback, he would have scored. But Tua threw it late and underthrew it. And I can't remember if that was the one that was picked or if that was just deflected. But
You do see that a lot with this Dolphins team with Waddle and Hill, and they'll kind of just stop and, like, wait for the ball to get there.
yeah. But either way, I think it was a good win for the Bengals just because, I mean, the Dolphins were seen as a top team in the league. And regardless, for the Dolphins, it's tough because Tua could be out for a few weeks. So,
I think a few weeks at best. I can't remember. Oh, before we move on from this game, I can't remember. I need to be better about referencing who posts the stuff, but someone posted on Twitter since the beginning of last season when Higgins and Jamar Chase are both on the field, so excluding games when one of them are hurt, T. Higgins is better in every single statistic. More catches, more yards, more touchdowns.
really,
Yeah.
I wonder if that's Jamar Chase demanding attention from the defense or is T. Higgins on that level?
I
Maybe
think
both.
I think there's not as big a gap between them. I also wish I would have known that for fantasy football because I drafted Jamar Chase in all my leagues.
Yeah.
But I thought it was just an interesting stat because I like Higgins. Out of where is he out of?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Clemson. I could be wrong, but yeah, it's just interesting that when they actually are both on the field, he's the better receiver, and I'm pretty sure most people will go Jamar Chase, top 3 receiver. T. Higgins, he's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, Clemson was right, by the way.
Yeah, well, I know my things. So, moving on.
Let's do it.
All right, so the next game we want to break down for you guys because we want to bring you some entertaining games. It's the Denver Broncos at the Las Vegas Raiders. Bum, bum, bum. So, by the numbers, the Raiders are a 2.5-point favorite, but they're getting the 3-point home gimme points that you always get. So, Vegas basically likes the Broncos, but it's kind of dead even. This will be an interesting game because if the Raiders go 0-4 and then go to the Chiefs next week and they go 0-5, what is going to happen?
That was another thing we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Is there any way Josh McDaniels gets put on the hot seat? Is he already on the hot seat? And is there any way he doesn't make it through the season? I think we did say that, but I can't imagine that because coaches usually are. This is an interesting one, not to get off topic, and we'll talk about the game, but usually new head coaches are given a first year buffer. But is this a little bit different because Josh McDaniels has been a head coach before and this roster was already a playoff caliber roster. So I'm wondering if there's any way like that a team that even in a tough division was seen to be a playoff caliber team if they go into they're at home today against Denver and then at Kansas City next week. If they start off 0-5, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it's just hard because Raiders were a playoff game last year. Derek Carr looked really good. They bring in Davante Adams. They bring in who's the defenseman they brought in?
The Raiders?
Yeah. Chandler
Jones.
They bring in Chandler Jones, and they don't look right. They have spurts where their passing attack does look legit, but then the defense just has times when it's just a complete letdown, and then the offense goes cold. But just looking at the injuries for this game, Hunter Renfrow, he's still out. He's been dealing with a concussion since the Cardinals game in week 2. The tight end, Moreau, who's a very good tight end, he's out. The Broncos are going to be missing Billy Turner. He's a solid offensive lineman. A few Darius Phillips, their corner, but nothing super serious. I just feel like I know people are like, oh, you got to let Russ cook and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
This team should just be a power. You have 2 power running backs, and a very good defense. It shouldn't be this hard for the Broncos to win. It's an indictment on Russ and more so the coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked that their offense has looked so poor. Like, I think they're near the bottom of the league in scoring per game, yards, and everything else. Russell Wilson, as you just said,
they're 31st in points per game. They're averaging 14.3 points a game.
Yeah, and I give credit to you and RJ during our predictions. I'm pretty sure you both weren't buying in that much to the Russell Wilson signing as it was going to push them way over the edge. I thought they were going to be a high power offense because they showed that they had the running backs last year, and Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, they both put up near 1,000 yards, I think, right? And then
something like that.
Then they have Jerry Jeudy, who's a promising young player, Cortland Sutton, who outside of injuries and a few inconsistent seasons was a 1,000-yard receiver not long ago before injury too. And then they did have the injury to the other receiver, and I can't remember his name. But they have weapons. And of course, usually adding a Super Bowl MVP caliber quarterback, even though he's on the other side of 30 now, is enough to put a team over the top, but it just hasn't paid off yet. And like you said, that's falling on the head coaches and Russell Wilson. I think the Raiders do need to win this game, but I think their defense is solid enough, and Davante Adams has kind of been put in check the last couple of games.
Yeah, he's. Here's the thing with Davante Adams. He's maybe the best route runner in the league, but it's like let him snap that route off and hit him right in the chest type of thing. It's not like he's not so much like a Diggs or a Justin Jefferson where he's going to hit an out or a zig and all of a sudden he's got 5 yards of separation,
Mm-hmm.
He's Davante Adams is always open, but he's not wide open.
Yeah, I mean I think he's top 10 in the league in targets with 34. And if you look at all the other receivers that have over 30 targets, they all have over 250 yards, 300 yards. He only has 189 with 11 yards per catch, and he only has one touch. No, that's not right. He has 3 touchdowns. Yeah, so he's gotten a touchdown in every game, but he's not really
Getting
which
the
is
yards.
important. But the yards, that moves the sticks, and that that you need yards to move in your offense. And I mean, he's got 17 catches on 34 targets. And maybe, he is a new wide receiver. It is a new system. He's been with the Packers his whole career. And Derek Carr, whether he said in the offseason he was a Hall of Fame, Devontae Adams said he was a Hall of Fame quarterback, going from Hall of Fame quarterback to Hall of Fame quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is obviously one of the best of all time. Derek Carr's not. And also, I thought that Josh Jacobs would be having a really good year because Josh McDaniels had, I mean, with the Patriots, they always had a running back. They never had star running backs, but their running backs always put up numbers, whether it was in the red zone or not. And I don't think Josh Jacobs even has a touchdown this year.
Just to counter that argument, Bill Belichick also basically had the Patriots having a top O-line almost every year. The Raiders O-line is not too good because of
That's
their
fair.
former GM.
That is fair. They like the style points, not the trenches.
Well, their last front office didn't like anything because they drafted terribly.
Yeah, I can't even find Josh Jacobs on here.
Look at his stats.
Yeah, but that is true with the offensive line. I don't know. I'm disappointed with the Raiders so far this year.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that. Just because and their offense is all right. They're averaging 21 points a game, which is 11th in the league. They're 18th in total yards. They're 7th in pass yards. They're bottom 4 in rush yards, which is hurting them. So they're getting their numbers, but it just has been kind of odd. Like they had that great first half against the Cardinals. They had a really good second half against the Titans when they were just throwing downfield and making plays. But in the offseason, I looked at this offense and I was like, Josh Jacobs, he's a battering ram. Like, he's more of just use them and abuse them. Devontae Adams is going to be there on your third downs or red zone. Hunter Renfrow seems to always be open. And then Darren Waller, I was like, he should be destroying teams, and it just hasn't been there. But this is my only thing for the Raiders. It's a classic good offense, bad defense. That happens all the time in the NFL. Like, if you have bad defense, you have bad defense. But here's the thing with the Broncos. They have the third defense in yards allowed. They're only allowing 250 yards a game. They have the I just lost it. They have the second defense for points. They're only allowing 12 points a game. They're only allowing 12 points a game, but their offense is only getting them 14 points a game. Like, with this defense, like, even bad teams would usually be doing all right. But this team with Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, that should be able to get you 20 points a game, like, easy. Like in your sleep. And I know Hackett's getting a lot of flack as a first-year head coach. I think they said he finally brought in like someone else to help him like handle responsibilities, which I think is a good move. But I just don't believe in this Broncos team. We're going to go into week 4, and if their offense still looks bad against the Raiders, I think I'm going to say I've seen enough, and I don't think they're like they might make the playoffs, but
not a contender.
I think they'd be fraudulent.
So pretty much, the AFC West isn't as good as we thought they were.
That's fair.
And the Chargers are dealing with a ton of injuries. The Chiefs just lost to the Colts. The Raiders we just talked about the Raiders and Broncos not looking that great. And some people thought they could have 3 teams going into the playoffs.
I will say I do like the Broncos in this game just because I don't like the Raiders defense. And I think the Broncos defense is going to give them plenty of opportunities. So I do like the Broncos to get the win, but I do not like the Broncos moving forward.
Fair enough. What's your score?
I have it. I just talking about how bad these teams were, but I have it Broncos 30, Raiders 24.
Yeah, I'm going Broncos 24, Raiders 21. I think there might be a defensive score, but I think both teams can put up 2 or 3 touchdowns each. And
yeah, so I think the Broncos are probably going to get. I have it. The Broncos are getting up early. Defense giving them some easy scores, easy short fields, and then the Raiders, opening up the pass attack at the end of the game to try and score, and getting a couple scores at the end of the game.
Makes sense to me.
All right, so the next game that we want to break down for y'all is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Did they announce that this game was going to take place in Minneapolis?
Minnesota.
Yeah.
They're playing in Tampa Bay.
Okay, so they did keep it in Tampa. All right.
Yep.
So right now, I believe the odds are Bucks -1. But similar to what we just said about the Raiders, they're getting some points for the home field advantage, but Vegas basically thinks it's a fairly even game. Just some injuries to go over. Chiefs are still without their kicker. That's what killed them last week. Will it haunt them this week? And then for the Buccaneers, Akeem Hicks is out, and almost all their receivers are questionable. But last I checked, they were on schedule to play. So Tom Brady might have his plethora of weapons tonight. But what do you think about this game?
I'm trying to pull up the stats really quick. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense has kind of been a little lackluster this year, I'd say so far.
Yeah, 17 points a game.
Yeah, they scored 19 against Dallas, 20 against the Saints, and then only 12 against Green Bay. I know they had some injuries in that last game with the receivers. And their defense is still playing well, at least.
Yeah, only allowing 9 points a game.
Yeah. Do you think? Yeah, Tom Brady. That's what I was looking for. Tom Brady's completing 65% of his passes, but he only has 675 yards, 3 touchdowns. He has 1 interception. I'm not trying to speculate or anything, but do you think there's a little rust with the offense because he was retired for a few months and he's getting, didn't they cut that? He was supposed to have off like once a week or 2 days a week. And like Todd Bowles said, they're not doing that anymore.
It was like 1 day a week he was supposed to have. I think it was Wednesdays were supposed to be scheduled off for him.
Like, is that off, or does that mean you're with the team and you're just not like practicing?
I think it's like off.
I feel like once you get to a point where you need a full day off because you have other priorities or whatever it may be, you should just retire.
Yeah, he's mentally he's still there, but I think his body is finally starting to turn on him. Granted, the Bucs O-line has been decimated with injuries, and same with the rest of their offense. But all the stories that came out, he looks like he's lost a bunch of weight. He retired and then came back, so I don't think he's there. And this might end up being a close game, but I think the days of Brady and Mahomes battling it out on these great back and forth games is over. And the Buccaneers defense is going to have to keep them in this game. And it's one, like we just said about the Broncos, their defense is going to have to carry them. Hopefully they can just, extend some drives to give the defense some rest, because that's one thing you don't want to wear down your defense throughout the year. But just looking at the numbers, they're only averaging 86 rush yards per game. They're 27th in total yards, and
It seems like they're leaning heavily on Leonard Fournette this year. Like, I'm surprised he's been such a like bell cow for them. He has 57 attempts, 225 yards. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet, rushing or receiving, but that is something I've noticed as well. I know we said they had the injuries last week with the receivers, but the Chiefs' defense hasn't been terrible either.
no, their defense has been way better than I expected. Hang on one second, I said pull something up.
Yeah. Looking for the stats for the receivers here.
But like you mentioned, for the Chiefs defense, they're averaging 300 yards allowed, which is ninth best in the league, and they're allowing 21 points, which isn't bad, especially when your offense is putting up 29. And I know the Chiefs, Mahomes doesn't have the receiving core he's used to. We'll see if Devin White can cover Travis Kelce throughout the game. That'll definitely slow down the Chiefs' attack.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the X factor in this game is Chris Jones. I don't think the Bucs can block him, and he's been playing pretty good this year.
Chris Jones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing too. I don't think you mentioned it. Did you mention the offensive line, Tampa Bay's offensive line?
Just injuries kind of hurt them this year.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that's a bigger issue with their offense than seemed to. I didn't think it would be that big of an issue. I know the offensive line is the trenches are important. I mean, I think we both agree on that, both sides of the ball. And I mean, to talk about the Chiefs, I thought they weren't going to be that good this year because I thought Tyreek Hill was that important. And I know they still have Travis Kelce. They have good running backs, but none of them are like studs or bell cows or anything. And they came out the first week of the season. Patrick Mahomes threw 5 touchdowns. They looked pretty good in week 2, and then week 3, they lost to the reeling Colts. So I mean, it's been a really weird year.
Well, I think with this Chiefs offense, it's just it used to be, you would play like everyone was saying that the best defense against the Chiefs is cover 2 and get a 4-man pass rush, and that's hard for that. That's like the key to beating most quarterbacks if you can do it. But Travis Kelce is very hard to cover unless you happen to have that one guy that can play physical and fast to cover him, and few teams have it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could play Tyreek Hill perfectly good, perfectly well, and he still couldn't get open for that 50-yard touchdown to change the game. So I think what happened against the Colts is the Chiefs were playing their game. The Colts were, keeping everything in front of them, not allowing any explosive plays. And then the Chiefs, they fumbled a punt, which gave the Colts short field, and their kicker's out, and they missed 3 kicks, I think. And when you aren't as explosive as they used to be, points are harder to come by. So when you're basically giving the Colts a touchdown, and then you're leaving, I don't know, 6 or 7 points on the board for bad kicks, that's how you lose that game.
Yeah, and he's still leaning. Patrick Mahomes is still leaning heavily on Travis Kelce. He leads the team with 24 targets, but I mean, Juju's there. He's got 19 targets, 14 catches for $178. I mean, it's kind of what he's been the last couple of years since his early days with the Steelers.
I still say the Chiefs need a running back.
Yeah, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's good out of the backfield as a receiver. I mean, he has 115 yards receiving, but he only has 116 yards rushing.
The Chiefs have a good offensive line. I doubt it'll happen. I've been saying it also out of selfishness. I wish the Chiefs would trade for Kareem Hunt, get him
Trade
back.
back for him, yeah.
But I've also been saying similarly they should trade for DJ Moore. But it's just Mahomes is Mahomes. Him and Andy Reid could together, similar with Brady and Belichick. As long as there is someone out there that can run something and catch a ball, they're going to push the ball downfield.
Mm-hmm.
He has a good O-line, and it's just Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He hasn't lived up to his draft potential, and the rest of the running backs are just just guys. I think if they had an adequate running back, even like say Jamal Williams on the Lions, that would be that extra dimension. Because in the past it's been like, well, with Mahomes you don't need to run the ball. Like they run just enough to keep the defense honest, but their thing is we're just going to pass the ball more better than everyone else, and you can't stop us. I think now with how the way their offense is formed, they need to run the ball, and they need to be able to run the ball good. And with this O-line, they should be able to if they had a proper running back.
And is that, like you just mentioned, they don't that's got to be the Tyreek Hill effect, right? Because defenses have to game plan for him, and I like to use a phrase you always say. You always say he's a what did you always say? Coverage buster, something along those lines. But when you have that kind of speed on the outside and then a safety blanket in Travis Kelce, yeah, you don't have to rely on the run game. But this is I'll just say I'm picking the Bucks to win this game, 27-24, because I do think that the Tampa Bay Bucks run defense is, I think it's top 5 in the league.
They've basically been top 5 for the last like 4 years.
Yeah, so a top run defense to go against a mediocre run offense, or at least no players in the backfield that scare you as a defense. They should be able to focus on Travis Kelce, and there's no Tyreek Hill to worry about. So I don't know. I think
it's funny because I have the Chiefs winning 27-24, and I think both teams will be able to score, but I think Chris Jones is going to cause enough problems that, getting Tom Brady's face right up the middle, or have to move enough shifting of the line to get double teams on and whatnot, and someone else comes free off the edge. I think Willie Gay has like 3 sacks for the Chiefs, so they're bringing him up the middle, off the edge, moving him around. But I just don't like this Buccaneers offense. And you would think on paper they're really good, but you got old Tom Brady, a bad O-line, and it hasn't been the best combination.
Yeah, I mean, we both have it coming down to 3 points, so it could go either way. I mean, at that point, it's pretty much a coin toss. But selfishly, I'm hoping and thinking that Leonard Fournette's going to have a 100-yard game and get his first score of the year here. And I think that's going to take off some of the pressure from the passing offense and open it up a little bit for Tampa Bay. So we'll see.
I mean, it's possible he could have a coming out game.
They run him so much, and he hasn't really popped off. And I know he's not really
well, he's fat.
Yeah, I mean, he's a strong power runner, and he can catch out of the backfield. He hasn't done it that much this year. He was doing it a lot last year, the year before, but I still think he has it in him. And like I said, his usage is so high, like he's bound to pop a big game off somewhere.
All right, well, we'll see who's right. We're both predicting 27-24, but we're predicting different teams win. Excuse me, early morning, Moving on to the next game on the schedule, we have the Washington Commanders at the Dallas Cowboys. Bum, bum, bum. Cowboys are a home 3-point favorite, which means a draw talent-wise, basically. Cooper Rush will be going for his 4th straight win as a starter. Well, yeah, even though it's been as his 4th straight win as a starter. Yeah. I got it. It's going to be an interesting game. Both teams fighting to keep up with the Eagles. Cowboys have been doing well without Dak, leaning on their run game, leaning heavily on their pass rush on defense. You have the Commanders who have Carson Wentz. He's had moments of brilliance for them, and he's also had his typical Wentz moments. Both teams look like they'll be fairly healthy, and I think it's going to be it should be a very competitive game in my opinion.
I think it's going to be it's an NFC East battle earlier in the year, later in the year. It always seems to be that way. Not with the Eagles last week, but usually. And the Cowboys Commanders usually put up those kind of games. The Commanders concern me as a football fan, and I thought they were going to have a decent year. I thought my bigger concern for them is their defense, because I thought the way for them to make the playoffs this year was to have a was it their defense 2019 or 2020, whichever year it was that their defense really came out firing on all cylinders and that defensive line was wreaking havoc. It just hasn't been there this year. Their defense ranks 31st or 28th in yards allowed passing, 31st in touchdowns allowed passing, and then 21st in rushing yards. Like you mentioned, Dallas leaned on the run game last week, and I'm not a fan of Zeke in general. I'm an Eagles fan, obviously, but I just don't think he's had the burst for a few years. But he did decent last week, and I mean, maybe with Tony Pollard taking more of the load off, and Tony Pollard is super explosive.
They're very, very talented 1-2 punch.
Yeah, I think that gives, if the Cowboys lean into Tony Pollard more and give him, 18, 20 carries, and then give Zeke like 10 carries, get like 30 carries a game, 30 rushes a game, maybe more, and then let Rush manage the game and not make mistakes and utilize CeeDee Lamb. Gallup's not back yet, is he? He's still out.
I think he's still out.
And is Schultz back? I can't remember.
Schultz is questionable, but they said he's probably going to play today.
Yeah. But either way, go ahead.
Schultz, that's one of the reasons why I looking at my picks, I did pick the Commanders. But after reading that this morning that Schultz was probably going to play, I might favor the Cowboys more because he is a very good tight end, and Cooper Rush, he would be a nice safety valve over the middle for Cooper Rush, seeing as CeeDee Lamb sometimes just drops wide open passes. But I was a little nervous because the Eagles just sacked Wentz 9 times last week.
Mm-hmm.
And this Cowboys D-line is perfectly capable of doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just
number one in the league, right?
Yeah, I just feel like this could be the game that I don't like McCarthy as a coach. And I think that they're opening things up for Cooper Rush, and they're going to get away from what's been working. And Cooper Rush makes 2 poor decisions. And I just throwing it out there because I'm talking about it. I have the Commanders winning 17-13. So I think it's just going to be a close game, and it's going to be who makes the more catastrophic mistake, because both these quarterbacks probably are going to have their fair share of errors.
I didn't think of that as a possibility, but you're right with McCarthy. Maybe them jumping the gun on Rush's abilities. If they do that, then I think they're in trouble. But if they play like they played last week, I think the game is Wentz's to give away. He's done what he's always done this year. I mean, I watched the whole game, obviously last week. He took the 9 sacks, obviously, and I think our pass rush did well, and their offensive line didn't. But a lot of those were Wentz holding the ball way too long, trying to make plays that weren't there. He just always tries to make the hero play and find the big play rather than taking the check down. And even the check downs, he just doesn't throw those accurately. And he missed some tight ends and running backs in the flat or didn't hit him. He didn't make that read. Like he doesn't have that internal clock to make that quick read.
I'm hoping the Commanders coaching staff saw what happened last week and sees who they're playing this week, and they drilled in. I mean, look at Logan Thomas is a good tight end. Curtis Samuel's a good receiver. You should be able to hit them underneath on these quick outs, let them make plays, throw a screen to Antonio Gibson. He does have his fumbleitis, but he's a former college receiver. He has hands. He is super explosive and a 220-pound running back frame. Throw a screen or something. Let slow down Dallas's pass rush, and then you can open up your deep attack to Terry McLaurin and their rookie receiver. I can't remember his name. Jahan Dotson. And just put points like in the Giants game with the Giants Cowboys. Put points on the board, and hopefully your high-paid quarterback can outduel Cooper Rush in the end. But you can't get from behind and then let the Cowboys just run the ball down your throat, manage the clock, and just put you away in the second half.
That's the problem Washington has had this whole year. They've been playing from behind every game, and I think someone who hasn't watched or doesn't know as much about Wentz, you look at his stats, he has 861 yards passing, 63% completion, which is it's not amazing, but it's good for him. And he has 7 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions. But they've been playing behind. He has made he's taken poor time sacks, and the interceptions and fumbles are still there. And their run game, I know Brian Robinson unfortunately had his incident before the season started and he's been out, and it sounded like they were going to be leaning on him. But Antonio Gibson only has 124 yards with a 3.1 yard per carry. And then J.D. McKissick, who I know he's more of a receiving back, but he only has 25 yards rushing for 2.5 yards per carry. And they, like I said, they're playing from behind. So if they can't establish the run, and if Dallas, I have Dallas winning 21-17 because I think the Cowboys are going to be able to run the ball, and I think they're going to be able to get a touchdown or 2 lead to where Washington is throwing the ball and they can't run the ball anyways, and they're going to be able to unleash that pass rush.
And this might be like naive of me or whatever, but I don't think Mike McCarthy is a good coach. The Cowboys are undisciplined. You see it in all the penalties they've racked up. I think if you're Ron Rivera or any coaching staff that's playing the Dak Prescott-less Cowboys, you know they're going to get after you with a pass rush, and they're going to run the ball heavily. And that's the 2 things they have. And if you let that beat you, and you're like, it just shows that you're not a competent team. Like the Giants, I like the Giants. They're in that game, but going into the year, thought the Commanders were going to be in the playoff hunt. I thought the Giants were going to be in the rebuilding stage. So I was like, whatever, Giants, like it is what it is. Who did the Cowboys beat in week 2? Do you remember?
I have it right here. I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head. They beat the Bengals.
Yeah, and the Bengals look terrible O line. They got after Joe Burrow. Bengals couldn't really stop the run, and people are pointing the finger at Zach Taylor and going, "Are you the right coach for this team now that we have Super Bowl aspirations?" So we'll see. I am picking the Commanders, but it could very easily flip the score. Honestly,
Yeah, it pains me to do so, but I am picking Dallas to win this game.
I mean, maybe we should be pointing the finger at Dak and being like, "How come you haven't done anything with this team at this point?"
I was just reading this morning that he just got his stitches taken out, and I guess he's throwing the ball this week.
They said they're waiting for the inflammation to go down so he can grip the ball properly. If they win this week, I would just say, why rush him back? Like,
That's what I think. That's what I was reading. If Rush plays well again and they win this week, let him stay on his timeline. And if he plays poorly, I guess I want to rush him in, but I don't know why you would do that anyways. How effective is he going to? Is he really going to be? But
yeah. Well, enough about the Cowboys. We don't want to talk about them too much. Moving on to the next game on our slate to cover. The Jacksonville Jaguars are visiting the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. Currently, the Eagles are a 6.5-point favorite, which I think is a fair total. This will be a good game because the Jaguars have showed that they are so far a legit team. So a win against them would strengthen the Eagles' 4-0 standing, I suppose. And it's like not they've beaten the Lions, Vikings, Commanders, and if they beat the Jaguars, granted, none of those teams were Super Bowl favorites, but it's not like last year with was it the Panthers that went 3-0, but it was like a joke.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean that. Yeah,
and then the Jaguars with a win or a competitive game show that they are for real and they should be taken seriously as an AFC South favorite.
I will say that I think this would be a bigger win for the Jaguars. Obviously the Eagles are favored and they're the last undefeated team in the NFL at 3-0. I just like you mentioned coming into the year, the Jaguars won 3 games last year, 4 games.
Yeah, something like that.
So outside of a coaching change, which obviously turns out to be very important for them, their roster isn't extremely different from last year. Off the top of my head, I mean,
the Jags,
James Robinson didn't play last year, right? He had the Achilles injury.
they didn't have James Robinson. They didn't have Travis Etienne. They've added Kirk Cousins and Zay Jones in the offseason. They brought in
Kirk Cousins.
I always Christian Kirk. I always say that. They brought in the offensive line, the right guard from Washington.
Okay, so they've made some changes,
Yeah.
but I don't think they were still predicted to be looking as good as they have, and I think that's good for Doug Peterson and his stock because Trevor Lawrence looks pretty good to start the year. He's playing within himself in the offense.
Yeah.
He's completing 70% of his passes, 6 touchdowns, only 1 interception. And people were
Zay Jones is inactive today. Just got that announcement.
Zay Jones just had a big game last week for the Jaguars against the Chargers, and he was a big waiver wire pickup this week. A lot of people picked him up, even though he's kind of been inconsistent throughout his career. Yeah, but and James Robinson too. That's a big surprise. He's got 230 yards. He's averaging 4.5 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. He had the 50-yard touchdown against the Chargers. And that was a complete win against the Chargers last week.
Yeah, I always liked James Robinson. I thought he would be slower coming back from his injury. They obviously are going to run through him and not Travis Etienne, to the dismay of my fantasy team. But I mean, just looking at the numbers, I was a little surprised. Points per game: Eagles 28.7, Jags 28. Points allowed per game: Eagles 16.7, Jags 12.7. And almost all their stats are very similar. Eagles offense is a little bit better as far as yards, and yards. Same with the defense; they allow a little bit less yards. But both these teams looking pretty good. If I were the Eagles, I would bring out the big boys on the D-line, say, James Robinson, like, you're going to be pounded into a wall today, and trust Darius Slay and James Bradbury to handle their jobs on the outside, and be like, all right, Trevor Lawrence, if you're legit, this is your moment. Show us.
Something to note that is a big loss is Avonte Maddox is out today.
Well, Zay Jones is out too, so
I was about to say that kind of cancels that out. I think Christian Kirk, he plays a lot from the slot, doesn't he?
they move him around. But yeah,
But I'm curious.
Bradbury and Slay can travel though. They both have experience doing that.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see what the Eagles' plan is for their nickel, because they could move. I sound like a terrible Eagles fan, but I keep forgetting his name. The corner they picked up from Gardner Johnson. They play him at safety, but he has a lot of experience at nickel.
Roll
So
him down.
Yeah, I'm curious if they do that. The Eagles' rush defense is it's ranked 18th in the league in yards, but a lot of that is from week one against the Lions.
DeAndre Swift.
Week 2, they shut down Dalvin Cook. Last week, they shut down Antonio Gibson and the rest of the Washington's run defense. So I think that's a little misleading. And
I also think the strength of the Jags defense has been their front seven. The linebacker they got from the Falcons, Olakun or whatever, I always pronounce it wrong. He's playing great. Their rookie linebacker, Devin Lloyd, he plays for the Jags, but he might be defensive rookie of the year this year.
I mean, he looks good in coverage. And
then they have Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen coming off the edge. So their front seven is legit. But the Eagles, sorry, I have to read this. Good. Michael Gallup and Dalton Schultz and Connor McGovern are officially active. So the Cowboys are without Dak, full health. So might change that pick. But the thing with the Eagles is, sure, they have Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, a few other what's the other one at Gainwell?
Boston Scott's out today.
Scott's out. They can run the ball. They have a very good O-line. They can control the line of scrimmage and control the clock. But if they can't make anything going on the ground, one, Hurts can just scramble and kill you that way. But he could just say, you know what? I got my 3 Batman on the outside. I don't know. I think the Jags pass defense is okay. They got Griffin and Campbell, their corner out of Georgia, both playing pretty well, but Devontae Smith, AJ Brown are a very tough matchup. And then if you fall asleep, Quez Watkins will just go over the top and make you pay. So
yeah,
I like both these teams. I just think the Eagles are like, I think the Jags are like the Eagles last year.
Fair enough. I think it's going to be a good game. I think, Jalen Hurts, we talked about in the last show, he's a way too early MVP candidate. He's looking really good. Everything that was a concern for him coming into the season, he's put to rest so far this year, as far as passing the ball and accuracy. He's a really hard player to defend, especially if he's throwing the ball that accurate. He's really smart with his runs. He doesn't look like he's that fast, but he's pretty fast and he's a strong runner. He knows when to slide. He doesn't take hard hits. and they just make it really tough on the defense with the read option threat with Sanders, or they usually have Sanders run. They've been running a lot with Sanders this year, thank God. And Gainwell's been a receiving back a lot, but they have that threat. They have that threat with Sanders and Jalen Hurts, and then the addition of AJ Brown has just it's been way better than I even could have anticipated. And all about him.
Must be nice.
And just that safety blanket to have on a slant route where even if he is covered, as long as if he's able to box out the corners just haven't been able to come through him. And he's so good at catching the ball away from his body, AJ Brown. That really helps Jalen Hurts, and he's been accurate too. And then, as you mentioned, the three Batmans, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Quez Watkins. And then Dallas Goedert, he should have a place in the Batman list. He should be, I don't know, whatever's left for types of Batmans. But I think there'll be a lot to handle for Jacksonville. I think if the Eagles can contain James Robinson and ETN coming out of the backfield, they've been using him a lot in the past game. They should be able to pressure Trevor Lawrence with their pass rush and their corners, as you mentioned. Slay and Bradbury have been playing well. I would love to see a lot of Jordan Davis today.
Yeah,
playing nose tackle and just clogging up that middle.
I'll give credit to Peterson with the Jags. He's been scheming runs up really well for James Robinson, changing it up with some heavy sets and then motioning people to get the defense to shift and get good looks for him to get opportune run lanes. I wouldn't be shocked if the Jags win a close game, but I think the big difference here is going to be the Eagles receivers, and if they can, jump up to a quick lead and really put pressure on Trevor Lawrence, the game could, get a little out of hand. But I'll be at 1:00. I'll be flipping between that and the Titans game to see what happens.
What was your pick?
I picked the Eagles 31-20.
Okay.
I just think
a nice little win.
I think the Eagles have enough firepower to get out in front, and I want to see how the Jags do against a legit team if they have to fight from behind.
Yeah, I have the Eagles winning 34-27, so a touchdown win. My one concern for the Eagles this year, which it's not a huge concern, has been their second half scoring. They haven't scored a point in the second half in 2 weeks. Granted, they've had huge leads. They've just gone off in the second quarter. I think maybe they played a little conservative. And I think with the opposing offense behind, they've been throwing the ball so much, and it's been keeping the Eagles off the field with getting chunk plays and whatnot. So I would like to see them score, 10. I would like them to at least score 10 points in the second half today, but I do have the Eagles winning by a touchdown.
That's something good to look for. We'll have to see what happens. So going on to the final game we are going to cover today, this morning, is the Buffalo Bills at the Baltimore Ravens. It's going to be an interesting game. Both 2-1, both with kind of a sucky loss on the schedule. Right now, the Bills are 3.5-point favorites. The game is in Baltimore, and it is probably going to be a rainy day. So we'll see what happens. Right off the top, Bills have one of the best passing attacks in the league, and right now the Ravens have one of the worst passing defenses in the league. Lamar Jackson is playing out of his mind, though, so they're never out of it.
Yeah, this game's destined to be high scoring, right?
Yeah, let me pull up the over-under. I can't remember what it was off the top. I think the over-under is like 50-something. But with the rain, who
50.
knows? Okay, 50.
Yeah, right on the dot.
But like, and if it's just a little rain, like a little Baltimore rain, I don't really care. Josh Allen is a big guy; he slings it. As long as it's not like that game against the Patriots where it was like a, a huge like cold winter storm and that game was awful. I'm not too worried about the rain. I'd actually be more worried about the rain and like the Ravens' ability to run the ball.
You like their ability to run the ball?
No, I'd be more worried about it because the Ravens like they do a lot of like horizontal stuff, and that's where you can slip.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about in the last show here that Lamar Jackson's pretty much been the Ravens' offense. He's got 10 touchdowns passing. I think he's got 1 or 2 rushing, and he's got I think over 200 yards rushing on the year too. Yeah, he's got 250 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. They run a lot of designed runs from him. I don't think it's definitely. We were just talking about Jalen Hurts. A lot of Jalen Hurts runs are designed for like first downs, short yardage, but he makes a lot of like scrambling, like out of game plan runs. I think Lamar Jackson, and I'm not even saying this is a bad thing, but I'm saying he's so good. They run plays for him to run the ball, and he's still, as a quarterback who's not a big, tough, quarterback, you don't want to get hit or run between the tackles, but he's so fast and he's just crazy good. But I do think you're right. The rain could. Did you say the rain could play a factor, or you don't think it would play a factor?
I mean, it's going to play some sort of a factor, but I think it might more so hurt the Ravens. Also, just because all the inactives are coming out, the Ravens are going to be Ronnie Stanley is not going to make his first start this week, and Patrick McCarry is out. So rookie right tackle Daniel Falele is going to playing left tackle for the Ravens.
That's going to be tough because the Bills' pass rush has been pretty dominant this year.
Yeah, Von Miller on a slow rookie right tackle, playing left tackle.
Yeah, they have 11 sacks on the year. And yeah, you just mentioned Von Miller, who's playing decently. I think you're right about. I mean, the Bills are. I don't know how often it rains in Buffalo, but it's definitely they have to deal with that wind, and I don't think any of that. I don't think the conditions matter at all to Josh Allen. His arm's so strong, and I think he can just throw the ball wherever, whenever he wants. And the Ravens defense it has not been good this year.
Can't get a pass rush. Linebackers aren't good. They have talent in the secondary, but they also have enough holes in the secondary that they kind of cancel each other out.
Yeah, I mean, they're healthy in the secondary too this year. They have Humphreys is back. Marcus Peters is back, right?
Yeah.
And they have they drafted Kyle Hamilton. I know you've highlighted his maybe preparedness not being there yet for the NFL. And then they have
Marcus Williams.
Oh yeah. They signed Marcus Williams, who looked good a couple weeks ago.
He's got 3 picks already, so.
Yeah, and then they still have
or 4. He may have 4 picks already. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember the safety that wanted to trade, but he's still on the team. Chuck Clark. Yeah. So I mean, they have talent, but if you can't get pressure on the quarterback and you make any kind of mental mistakes on the back end, as they did against Miami, giving up that huge lead in the fourth quarter.
Odafe Owe, the Ravens defensive end, first round pick last year.
Mm-hmm.
He has like I can't remember the exact stat, but he has like 120 pass rushing snaps, and he has 0 quarterback hits. He has like 5. He has like 5 pressures.
Yeah. How many sacks do they have on the year? I keep forgetting they have Justin Houston. I mean, Justin Houston's their leading sacker, and I guess he's an Angel's wonder. I don't know about that, but he has 2 sacks on the year.
Well, one was when the Dolphins just forgot to block him. He ran right through and got Tua right away.
Yeah, you know who Patrick Queen's been kind of disappointing. But
He has no football instincts, and he's terrible at tackling.
Yeah, that's the tackling was a big problem, and he's tied for second on the team.
I said when they drafted him, he kind of popped off at the end for LSU, but I'm like, if he's so good, why hasn't he ever started until they were forced to play him? So, and then Justin Houston's out today, so
Oh, it is.
I mean, is Josh Allen going to have all day to just sit in the pocket and then like throw bombs away to Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs?
Yeah, I mean, the Bills still have Singletary and Zach Moss, and don't forget about James Cook.
Yeah.
But he hasn't been too active in the offense so far. I do have the Bills winning 38-35, so
I have Bills 37-31.
Yeah, I'm going really high scoring. I think Lamar Jackson is that good this year. He's just throwing the team on his shoulders. I think he can. He hasn't looked like he can, and he hasn't looked like he can't put up points against anyone. I know it's still early, but
here's my wild card. The Bills linebacking core, Edmonds and Milano, are playing out of their minds this year.
Yeah.
So can they make life miserable for Mark Andrews and stay in front of Lamar to bottle him up? I don't know. If Lamar Jackson wins this game and balls out, the Ravens are going to have to open their checkbook.
That's true. And you're right, because Mark Andrews has been by far his favorite target his whole career. And that's one thing that I always feel like I have to say that because people are so quick to want to defend Lamar Jackson. I'm a Lamar Jackson fan. I think he should be paid. I think the Ravens should pay him. And I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But he still has trouble with accuracy at times. And it's the way he throws the ball. I say it every time we talk about him. He throws the ball with the side of his arm, which is necessary sometimes, but not when you're throwing an out route to a wide receiver. The ball is just going to float and get intercepted, and it happened last week. But Mark Andrews by far leads their team with targets, 31. Next most is Bateman with 16. We talked about that in the last show. Bateman's pretty much good for one big play a game, and Mark Andrews is just old reliable. There's a reason why Lamar Jackson has such a connection with Mark Andrews, because Mark Andrews is so big and he has one of the best catch radiuses in the NFL. He mosses people, and he's good. He's just good all around. He can make plays after the catch, and he can make plays downfield, even when he's covered.
Just a big wide receiver.
Yeah. So I mean, if the Bills with their linebackers can play tight coverage and do their most to keep Mark Andrews in check, and they can contain Lamar Jackson, which is really hard to do. Is they're really containing him. But if they can do it and they can tackle well, they should be able to win. And I mean, we both have them scoring 37 to 38 points.
I'm honestly surprised that this isn't one of the primetime games this week.
It should be. I thought it was an 8:00 game. I got my weeks messed up. It should be, but It's going to be. I hope if this comes out and it's like 21-24 or something like that, I'd be shocked. But it could be a blowout too, because they're both high. I would be more shocked if the Ravens blew out the Bills. I think that would be, like you just said, if I was the Ravens, if they blow out the Bills or beat the Bills, either way, maybe, slide a checkbook right over to him and let him write down his numbers, especially if they blow him out. But I would be less shocked if the Bills come out and win a little more lopsided. I do think it's going to be a close game, but we'll see what happens. Should be a good game.
Yeah. This is my game of the week, and it's going to be telling. The Ravens are coming off who did they play last week?
The Ravens?
Yeah.
They played The Patriots, they
coming off.
They gave up 26 points to the Patriots. I should add that.
But Lamar had a great game against the Patriots, and then the Bills are coming off a tough loss to the Dolphins, where not only Josh Allen but their offensive coordinator kind of throwing a fit after the game. Not to get off topic, but after that Bills Dolphins game, after the end of the game, when like Tua was like consoling Josh Allen, it was like talking to him and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
This could just be me being like an a-hole or something, but I was like, this is not how it's supposed to be. I was like, Josh Allen is arguably the best quarterback in the league, and Tua Tagovailoa is still earning his stripes, and like Tua's there like holding Josh, whispering into his ears. Like if I was Josh Allen, I'd be like, what are you gonna tell me that I don't already know? Like,
yeah, I mean, if you look at the stats too from that game, the Bills put up, I think they had over 400 yards.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
But anyways, those are the 6 games that we wanted to break down for you going into the week 4 Sunday slate of games. The Vikings Saints game is on now. It's a bit of a snooze fest. Vikings are just kicking field goals left and right. Won't be surprised if the Saints kind of backdoor this and end up winning the game.
How's Dalton got to start today, right?
Yeah, I didn't even pay attention to his stats. I know Latavius Murray just got a touchdown for the Saints. Dalton is 15 of 19, 145 and a touchdown. So
not bad.
He's not making a lot of mistakes. Dalvin Cook, 15 for 50. And Justin Jefferson, he's got 90 yards receiving, but no touchdowns. So we'll see. Fourth quarter right now, so we'll see who comes out on top of that game.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to put up our predictions for this week?
Yeah, we can start with the 1 p.m. games. These are backwards, so
yeah. So for the 1 p.m. games, we both like the Vikings. We both like the Browns, the Bills, and the Cowboys. Our first disagreement is I favor the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And Trevor likes the Lions coming out on that one. And in the rest of the games, we favor the Chargers over the Texans. If the Chargers lose to the Texans, then fire everyone. We both like the Titans just barely edging out the Colts today. We're split on Giants-Bears. Trevor, probably because he's a Giants hater, thinks the Bears are going to do something in that one. But I think the Bears are just a terrible franchise right now.
I had Khalil Herbert going off this game if he's
perhaps. And then we both like the Eagles over the Jags. That should be a very entertaining game. And then we're split once again for Jets Steelers. I like the Jets with Zach Wilson coming back, getting the win today. And then Trevor likes the Steelers getting the 24-20. We both apparently like the 24-20 score for this game.
Selfishly, I'm hoping Najee Harris has a big game today, and I think Zach Wilson coming back might hurt the Jets.
It's possible. Maybe he opens it up, though.
Yep. Let me pull up.
So going to the late night and primetime games. Cardinals at Panthers. I got the Panthers getting a close and gritty win over the Cardinals, and Trevor similarly has the Cardinals winning by 1. We both like the Packers over the Patriots. Patriots offense is just giving you absolutely nothing. We went over already. We both like the Broncos over the Raiders. I like the Chiefs over the Bucks. Trevor likes the Bucks over the Chiefs. We talked about that. And then for the Monday night game, Rams at 49ers should be an entertaining game. Both teams are still looking to get their footing for this year, but we both like the Rams to edge out the Jimmy Garoppolo-led Niners.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good games this week.
Yeah, it should be some good football. I plan on sitting on my couch, eating a bunch of junk food, and watching football all day long. Anything? Yeah, why not? Why not? Not going to be productive at all. Anything else you want to talk about today?
Nope. My palms are starting to get a little sweaty. It's about an hour before kickoff, and I'm always nervous leading up to the Eagles games. Obviously, being an Eagles fan, that's the game I'm highlighting today. But of course, there will be other big games on. Bills Ravens, the early game. I'm excited for that one, and then you got Broncos Raiders 4:00, and then Chiefs Bucks later tonight. So it's going to be a good day of football altogether. Hopefully.
Well, my little parting thought for this: I went to Buffalo this weekend, had a quick turnaround, came back, tried some wings while I was up there. I still say Lito's wings, jumbo wings, holds their own against pretty much anything I've had so far in my life. So
Did you
shout
get the
out.
classic Buffalo?
I got hot, which I was told was very, very hot, but
Not for you.
not for me.
I feel like you got to go get Buffalo wings because they're Buffalo.
They didn't have buffalo flavor.
What?
It was like mild, medium, medium.
Is that
hot,
like an
hot.
outside of Buffalo thing? Like Buffalo has no Buffalo wings, but everywhere else calls them Buffalo wings.
I guess. I don't know how it works, but they weren't bad wings. I'm coming home to my Litos. I'm not going to complain. Hot wings and blue cheese, can't go wrong with it.
I had
Um,
Buffalo wings from Litos this weekend.
Good choice. I might order some now so I can pick it up for the 1:00 games. Well, that does it for week 4. No Interference Live. Thank you for tuning in. We are your host, Westside and Big Sass. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, share, drop a comment. We would love to talk to anyone, honestly, about football. We'll be posting some more videos shortly today, and tune in next week. We will be breaking down all the events of this weekend, and we'll be coming to you once again live next Sunday around 10 a.m. or so. So that'll do it. Adios.
See you later.